if we use those correctly, right? Those are not meant to be overly process oriented. They don't replace what sets apart the ultra high performer. And that is that you are tuned in, you're in the moment, you're really paying attention to your buyer, not to the process, not to some checklist, where am I now and what questions should I ask? That becomes a barrier between you and the buyer.
Today, discover how to improve your selling process, make more sales, and generate explosive profits in the next 30 days. I'm Ken Newhouse. Building a profitable business isn't only about generating leads and driving sales. It's about who we are and what we're made of. It's about finding the most effective methods to persuade, inspire, and ignite the imagination of others so you can succeed in business. If you're a member of the new breed of entrepreneur, I invite you to join the quest as we reveal the newest and most effective methods you can use to get clients now. Today's episode is about sales. It's about helping you build essential skills so you can convert more prospects into paying clients. It's also about showing you how to effortlessly make connections with prospects and clients, a fundamental skill that most of us have overlooked or completely ignored. Now, if you're like me, you realize that in the new COVID economy, buyers are empowered because they have more options, they have more access. Comparison shopping has never been easier or more convenient, and online reviews provide an instant snapshot of your business. In the new COVID economy, you have to work harder to demonstrate your competitive differentiation, and you've got to work smarter by adding genuine value for your buyers. And one of the demands buyers are making more frequently is that they want to work with professionals they can connect with on an intimate level based on absolute trust. This means that buyers want to work with individuals who are knowledgeable about their own products and services and knowledgeable about their needs and the competitive environment in which they operate. This is a daunting challenge, and to be successful, you absolutely have to make a different kind of connection with your prospects and clients. Everybody knows that to quote-unquote genuinely connect with your clients requires that you go beyond a superficial selling relationship. Unfortunately, too many of us know that, as an example, if your client enjoys baseball, he might actually enjoy a casual exchange about his favorite team before you move into the sales conversation. But let me be very, very clear here. This superficial banter is no longer enough to create or solidify a connection strong enough to generate a sale for you, or more importantly, create lasting relationships with your buyers. And as many of us have discovered, hard selling tactics, otherwise known as pitching your products and services, that no longer works. Gone are the days, long gone in fact are the days, when you could make a generic presentation, overcome a few objections, and then push for the close. Buyers aren't responding to this approach, and they never will again. Hi, I'm Ken Newhouse, and I want to welcome you to episode number 402 of the Get Clients Now podcast. My guest for today's episode is Deb Calvert. Calvert is president of People First Productivity Solutions, which is an organization that works with companies to build organizational strength by putting people first. Her work in sales training, leadership development, and team effectiveness is research-based and people-focused. Calvert leads the Stop Selling and Start Leading movement and founded the Sales Experts channel. She is certified as an executive and sales coach and is a certified master of the Leadership Challenge. Her bestseller, Discover Questions, Get You Connected, has recently been named by HubSpot, listen to this, as one of the 20 most highly rated sales books of all time. 2 caveats to that. She's the only woman on the list. Second caveat, she's the only one where her book was self-published. That is an immense, amazing accomplishment. And during today's conversation, Calvert is going to help you fill in the gaps and teach you how to make the connections you need with prospects and clients so you can generate more sales and make your business more profitable. You know, in order to truly connect with buyers, you absolutely have to know how to ask strategic questions that are respectful, time-efficient, relevant, stimulating, value-adding, and collaborative. And by the end of today's conversation, you'll be the one buyers want to talk to. So if you're ready, let's welcome my guest, Deb Calvert, onto the show. So Deb, on behalf of myself and members of the Get Clients Now Nation, I want to welcome you to the show today. I know you've been under the weather a little bit, but how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for asking, and thank you for bringing me onto the show. I'm a fan, and so I'm delighted and honored to be here.
I have to say, this is one of the interviews, and I have the good fortune of interviewing a lot of very well-known people, a lot of very successful people. This is an interview that I've been looking forward to since we talked with great anticipation. And I'll just say right up front that it's because, you know, you're one of 20 people who HubSpot rated as the top sales pros or the top sales books of all time. You're the only woman, and the book we're going to talk about, Discover Questions, today was that book. I think it's my responsibility. I just want to emphasize to my listener, really get it across them as clear as I can. This is a person that you absolutely want to pay attention to. And Deb, I just want to thank you before we get started for the contributions that you've made, because you could be like on the beach somewhere doing nothing many, many years ago, but you still continue to give back. And we'll talk about some of the work that you're involved with here at the end of the show. But for that person who may not know all that much about you, and I will admit freely, as I did when we first talked, I wasn't aware of your work until Jim Keenan and Jeb Blunt gave you like the highest recommendation and said, you absolutely have to have this book. You absolutely have to follow this woman. But if you could bring us up to speed, how you got started to the point where you are now, where you're one of the top sales leaders on the planet.
Well, let me get my ego back in check. Thank you. I used to sell newspaper advertising, and I always was surrounded by a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners. And I thought about someday I might like to have my own business. But before that, I took a job at corporate, a Fortune 500 company that owned the newspaper. And in that role, I was working across 39 markets and had lots and lots of really good insights because of being in advertising, working with a lot of small businesses. So something kept coming up, though, over and over and over again, which was about questions. Which questions really work in selling? So that was a curiosity. I started at that corporate level doing some research. Then the company was sold, and I thought, here's my chance. And I went into business for myself and really amped up the research, working with the folks at the Kellogg School at Northwestern initially, and discovered for myself a certainty. This I'm spanning 20 years of what I'm describing, but I was quite certain that there are only 8 purposes that people ever ask questions. And from that came the acronym DISCOVER. From that came ongoing research, which continues today, and the book of the same name, Discover Questions.
That kind of leads me to my next question. You might have answered it actually, but maybe a little more detail. Paint a picture for us of what it was that inspired you to write this book. Now, I'm going to just freely admit, I've done 3 books. They are nowhere near to the level of the books. My books were written for a different reason, but I cannot imagine the amount of effort and the research and the dedication and the time and the sweat and maybe like, hey, this is a lot of work I'm doing. Paint the picture for us. What led you to write this book? Because it is amazing.
Thank you. It was because I saw a need. I saw my own need when I was first in selling. I saw the need over and over and over again across the markets where we were training people. When I was working through the Salesforce Advisory Board at Northwestern, I started hearing about this need in all industries. And I had already started gathering research informally, then later more formally, and it's buyer side research. So I would, for example, do a ride along with the salesperson. Before that, though, I would talk to the buyer we were going to call on or shortly after and ask them about the questions asked. Then I'd train the sales team and we'd have another encounter with the buyer and I'd ask for the contrast. And so it just became clear to me very quickly that there's a night and day difference in how buyers receive our questions and what happens when we do or don't ask really high quality questions.
I think everybody knows Jim Keenan. Everybody knows Jeb Blunt for sure. What has surprised you most about how this book has been received?
Oh, I didn't know what to expect at all. Being a new author, and because I was absolutely unknown, I didn't have a publisher. So it happens to also be the only self-published book on that list of the top 20 most highly rated. I believed it was something that could be valuable. I didn't realize who it would be valuable for, and a lot of those nice reviews and a lot of the contacts people have made with me are from small business owners and from people at every level in selling. I think what surprised me most is how people have talked about how they transfer what they learn here into their everyday conversations and into their personal lives. And there's some great, really impactful stories, gratifying stories to me when people come back and they say things like, this helped my marriage, or some really big, great stories that have come out of it, because it is questions and conversations are the stuff that relationships and trust are made of.
The book is just amazing. And I want to say this before I want to do some more housekeeping very quickly. My listener knows that I guarantee every person who's a guest on the show their book, oftentimes coaching programs. But I want to do something today just because I feel, the Bible says to give honor where honor is due. Some are worthy of double honor. And so I think because it's going to help me that much. Your work is going to help me so much. I'm really excited about it. I don't know if you can tell. I want my listener to be excited about it. I'm going to provide a double your money back guarantee. So here's how this works. invest in Deb's book, Discover Questions. It will literally transform whether you're a sales professional, a professional service provider, a consultant, whatever. It's going to transform how you're able to convert a prospect and that whole entire process into a paying client who stays with you for a long time, who pays and refers. If you can't say that for any reason, email me at customerservice@kennewhouse.com. I will give you a double your money back guarantee. No questions asked. The book is that good. So I want to get that right off the table. From a 30,000 foot view, what are Discover Questions? What's the purpose of the Discover Question framework?
So Discover is an acronym. It stands for the 8 purposes of asking questions. And when you think about the fact that there's supposed to be a purpose behind a question, well, that in and of itself can be a game changer. No more fishing expeditions, no more accidental, awkward conversations. So the book teaches you those purposes, what they are, and it gives you insights about why it's important to think about how you craft your question, how you sequence it, and your purpose behind it. It changes conversations when you have that mental dial in to your questions. So the framework, I could take you through the 8 types really quickly.
Sure. Yeah, run with it.
All right, I'll start right at the top. So D, the D stands for data. Most people are already very, very good at asking these questions. They're about just the facts, right? Anything that's provable. So you already know how to do that. You probably already do enough of it. In fact, you might do too much of it. Out of the 8 types, the data question is the only one that buyers are a little bit fatigued with. It doesn't add value to them. It's not relationship building. So a word of caution. The next one is the I. It stands for issue. And issue questions are the only one where the purpose is about sort of helping yourself or finding out information about yourself. So an issue question has 2 forms. You either want to prevent an issue. So if Ken, I'm going to be working with you, I say to you in advance, hey, tell me, Ken, a little bit about your preferences when it comes to communication. How often? What's your preference? Email, phone call, what do you like? So I'm proactive. I'm preventing any issue from happening because I understand your preferences. I mean, it's hugely differentiating. Several of these questions have that icing on the cake benefit of really helping people see you in a different way. So a reactive issue question, there's already an issue on the table. Most of us want to duck, dodge, deny, pull back, not have that conversation. But if you'll go ahead and ask more and allow the buyer to vent a little bit, it's going to repair the relationship more than anything else possibly could. So I made a mistake or my company screwed up or whatever happened and you're complaining to me. I don't make excuses. Instead, I say something like, oh, Ken, I'm really sorry this happened, but I want to understand more. Tell me about the impact it's having on you. Just walk me through it. And I listen. Okay, the next one, nobody thinks about this in selling because we're always in such a hurry. But ultimately, it's exactly what you really want to be doing. So if you can be purposeful with the S or solution question, it can be a huge accelerant through any sales process. So what an S solution question does is it sort of plants seeds for you to think about alternatives, and it gives me your initial reaction to those alternatives. So I can find out if this is a maybe interested or red flags, warnings. That's not where we need to go. But it makes you think about some alternative. I say something to you like, hey, Ken, what are your thoughts about taking your podcasts and changing them to Saturday? I'm making that up. Probably not a good idea. But I have an idea. Instead of me telling you the idea, I'm tapping into what have you thought or, what's your reaction? If I don't have a solution, I can still use a solution question like, what have you seen other podcasters do that's been successful for them? Right. So I'm just looking for whatever brings alternatives back to the forefront. Okay, the next 2 are fast. They're easy. They travel together and they're already embedded in most salespeople's vernacular. C for consequence, O for outcome. You heard about these way back in spin selling and everything else. But it's about, let me understand the pain, let me understand the consequences and the risks. And of course, outcomes, O, let me understand your hopes, dreams, plans, goals, vision for the future. So I've got both sides of the coin, the downside and the positive side.
Like she said, she just literally skimmed the surface on that. She has, I don't know how many examples of like dialogue between buyer and seller of, hey, this is how not to do it. This is how an ultra high performer does it. And you give multiple examples, different types of selling situations, which I found very, very helpful. A lot of selling books actually maybe they give a lot of examples, but it's one particular type of industry or niche, which makes it difficult for some people because they can't envision themselves in that particular scenario. So, Deb, I'm going to kind of do a little side swipe here and ask an out of the box question. And this is for me personally. I've read and I've experienced myself that a lot of professional sellers and a lot of people who are in professional services don't want to challenge buyer assumptions because they don't want to seem quote unquote salesy, or they don't want to seem pushy. So they're afraid to actually challenge the buyer's assumptions. Help my listener, help me understand the flawed nature of that thought process, why that is really a bad idea.
Well, if you see yourself as a salesperson or a business owner, if you see your role as one where you help people, then it raises your level of responsibility. To help people, sometimes you have to tell them the truth. Sometimes you have to help them avoid making a mistake. Sometimes you have to save them from themselves. And standing by and watching that happen is irresponsible, and it's not very nice. I'd rather somebody be a little miffed with me for a moment to later see that I was on their side and that I cared enough to go ahead and bring something to their attention. So it's not pushy. Now, of course, you've got to do this in a way that makes sense to the buyer. So it's not confrontational. But you see, that's one of the best things about questions is that they're softer in some cases than just blatantly, directly telling somebody something.
And that's one of the things I took away from your book. You make it so evidently clear. And I think this is a mistake a lot of sales professionals make and people who are selling their professional services, is that they think selling is taking advantage, or it's a combative situation that you have to win and dominate the buyer, when in fact, selling, in my estimation, at least how I look at it, is very ethical. It's very noble. There's a lot of art to it. There's a lot of science to it. And you're looking out for the best interests of the person on the other side of the table, your buyer. You're trying to facilitate them. It's like you're almost working for them when in fact, you're working for yourself or your boss. But that's how I see it. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't. Why do you think people still see it as a combative, gotta dominate, gotta win, hard sell, whatever it is, which I think has jaded some people from the process and not wanting to be, obviously no one wants to be seen like that. But why do you think some people still approach sales like that?
Well, it's pervasive. This stereotype that you're describing is pervasive. Buyers think that about sellers. Sellers often find themselves in organizations where, sadly, that is the culture, or they're watching movies and media or responding to buyers. There's a lot of external forces. I talk to a lot of people who say, I never wanted to be in sales. I don't like the person I have to become to be successful in selling. And I'm just like, stop. The second book, also based on buyer side research, is Stop Selling and Start Leading. And we really break down those stereotypes and get to the heart of what is causing that and what you can do differently about that.
So you just gave me an opportunity to invite you, if the experience today is going to be awesome for you and you love it, which I hope you do, and it works out well, I would love to have you back. I have to read that book. I haven't had an opportunity to read it yet, but I would love to have you back and have a conversation about that. We're talking about the buying process and how it's pervasive, that people, see it as combative and have to dominate. And we talk about, the buying process. Why do you think it is that so many sales professionals have a hard time understanding that it's critical? And this is something you point out in the book. Aligning the sales process with how the buyer and the buying process works. Paint a picture for us of maybe 2 or 3 examples of the difference between how an ultra high performer might try to get that alignment set up correctly from the start versus someone who isn't, is just average.
Well, I do think we've come a long way in terms of recognition of the customer experience and the buyer journey. So I think there are some forces at work that will eventually help us all in selling, if we use those correctly, right? Those are not meant to be overly process oriented. They don't replace what sets apart the ultra high performer. And that is that you are tuned in. You're in the moment. You're really paying attention to your buyer, not to the process, not to some checklist. Where am I now? And what questions should I ask? That becomes a barrier between you and the buyer. To give you an actual contrast, when I see a salesperson not responding to a buyer in that way that we're talking about, it's because they're in their head and they're thinking didactically, what process, what step, what next, what should I say? And they've failed to listen to the buyer because they're like ticking off all those boxes of process in their head. Whereas I'd rather see you make an error on process because you're so focused on what the buyer's saying. You can always come back to your process. Your process is not a fail-safe. Your process is meant to only be a guide, but your human-to-human relationship and your in-the-moment time with that buyer will always win over a process alone.
I mean, based on what you wrote in the book, and I think it's almost common sense, but again, it's like almost probably most people overlook it, that increases your value, your perceived value, and your actual real tangible value to the buyer, which is something you talked about in the book where you said value is inherently personal. Walk us through that.
Well, I think there are 3 levels of value. So let's make that distinction. People will better understand. The first value is the value of your product. Whatever you sell, there's some value that comes with that. Everybody else who sells the same product is offering the same kind of value, though, so be careful. The next level is added value, and this is everything you do to sweeten the deal. It's everything that you or your company does to differentiate the product. It's still the level of product or service now with these enhancements or added value. And most folks stop there. The real value comes in the moment with a buyer. It's created value. And that includes things like, you asked a great question, you made me think. That created value in an instant. It's, you really listened to me, and I appreciate that. You made eye contact and we had a human-to-human connection. It is that you heard that little crack in my voice and you responded to it and you just dignified where I was coming from and how I was feeling in this day. Created value is from you personally, and it matters greatly.
And so when we're talking about personal value, and we're going to get to brand value, our personal brand here in just a minute, what is the difference? This was a little perplexing to me before I read it in the book, but what is the difference between the seller adding value and creating value, which I think will kind of be a continuation of the conversation we've just been talking about?
You bet. But I'm glad you're asking for examples. I really think it's important to distinguish. So added value goes something like, Ken, I heard what you said about your budget and your contract situation. So I'm going to go ahead and knock 25% off this first year that you're doing business with us. That's added value. Yeah, you like it, but I'm vulnerable. What if my competitor comes in and says 30% for you, right? So anything that's price-based or anything that's a gift or a giveaway is always replaceable. Created value cannot be replicated by someone else. They could probably not even necessarily figure it out. What was that magic that happened when we were talking? It's how you differentiate yourself, not from your product, your price, your promotions. It's none of that. It's just the people, the human-to-human people part. It's things like I mentioned earlier, but my favorite thing for someone to say when I'm talking to them is, and they say it a certain way, it's, oh, wow, that's a really good question. Because in that moment, I've asked them something that they haven't thought about quite that way before. There's value in thinking about it that way. And now their wheels are turning. And if I'll bite my tongue and not jump in, there's going to be something really important that comes to them or that helps them in whatever the next steps they need to take might be. So that's created value. And I know it sounds intangible and it sounds difficult, but when you master questions and you start having those kinds of conversations, you'll instantly understand the value of it for everyone.
Speaking of human-to-human contact, I made a huge faux pas. I've been doing this forever now, like 4 years, which seems like forever. But one of my favorite questions to ask that I ask everybody at the beginning, I forgot to ask. So I'm going to ask it now. Deb, what's something about you that people in the marketplace, maybe even people that know you and work with you very, very closely, don't know about you, but you'd like them to know?
Most people don't know that I love the outdoors. My happy place is outside. I think most people see me in an office or some workplace or on video, and they don't envision me outside. Fresh air, sunshine, snow, I don't care. I just love to be outdoors, and I've got to go outside a few times a day just to breathe the air and restore myself.
Nice. And so speaking of outside, that's how I was first exposed to you. And let me explain so my listener knows what I'm talking about. I was listening to Gap Selling by Jim Keenan when he said, I was walking my dog. I have a new puppy. He said, you got to check out Deb Calvert's book because he was talking about command statement starter words, which is a perfect segue. So I had never heard of command statement starter words before he introduced it. And immediately when he said, you have to get her book, I put a pause on the audiobook that I was listening to and I went to Amazon and I bought your book. What are command statement starter words? Paint a picture, lead us through the process, how they work, why they're effective, why it's critical to utilize these in the process of selling. And what's the difference between someone who maybe uses these effectively versus someone who doesn't?
Well, there are basically three ways you get people to give you information. Two of them are questions, one is not. So the two types of questions are open-ended: who, what, where, when, why, how, which. The second type of question, a sentence that ends in a question mark, starts with a helper verb. Can you, will you, did you, right? So those are the two question types. The third type, though, of ways to get information from someone is a command statement. It's not a question, it ends in a period, but it commands people give you information. So these are sentences that start off with describe, explain, tell me, walk me through, help me understand, an infinite number of ways that you could put a command out there. And they are really good to master. So I commend you for working on it because, and this is measured in the brain, when you phrase something as a command statement, it causes people to take a little longer to answer because they're thinking, and they give you more information. You get a more enriched response when you use a command statement. Here's the problem, and this is very true in the Midwest and South especially. We are sort of conditioned to take perfectly good command statements and tag on those helper verbs at the beginning. And it ruins the question because you're signaling anytime you use a close-ended question, you're signaling to people that you want a short, fast answer. So the difference between, Ken, could you tell me about how you got started? And Ken, tell me how you got started. It's a vast difference in terms of how much information I'm going to get. And if I'm selling and I'm getting to know you, I should be yielding the floor to you as often as possible for as long as possible. So command statements do that.
Something else, I just from my gut, from like a visceral feeling I got, and I think you probably outlined this beautifully in the book. It puts you in a position of like, the buyer is going to see you as being much more confident in yourself versus, could you, do you think, which is from a position of weakness and uncertainty, at least in my opinion, in some cases, many cases. But the command statement starter words, I thought, well, wow, this is going to help me make, in the buyer's eye, it's going to help me be perceived as being much more confident, more authoritative, more in control of the situation, and then shut up. And like you said, don't ruin it by throwing a question on the end of it. Are there any type of situations where we want to avoid utilizing or deploying command statement starter words?
Well, two. First, don't do all of your questions in that form. It does start to be a little overwhelming, but absolutely pick that type when you want to yield the floor and you want to get a lot of information. And the second time you wouldn't use those if what you really want is a yes/no answer. You just want a point of clarification, let's say. In that case, go ahead and use a close-ended question. The idea here is being purposeful. What do you want to accomplish with the question you're about to pose? And then deliberately pose it that way.
How important, and we mentioned this earlier, and I kind of circled around and I'm going to come back to it. How important is the seller's brand? What exactly is the seller's brand? I know a lot of us work for a particular brand. I have a brand for Get Clients Now podcast. I have a brand for my company, but I also have a personal brand. So what is the personal brand and why is that so important? I think it's often overlooked, especially by people who maybe have their own company or maybe even I'm not so sure with employees, but they don't understand the importance of developing a really powerful personal brand.
Yeah, I see it all the time. And so there's already the stigma. If I'm selling something, I might be labeled with those stereotypes. So to me, in sales, it's even more important that you have a personal brand. I call it a credo. So start there. A credo statement starts with the words, I believe. And if you'll fill in the next words for yourself, reflecting your values, reflecting how you want people to see you, and later how that credo statement then helps you decide on your behaviors. Then you have an internal compass. So yes, it's important to the rest of the world, but I think in sales, it's even more important for you personally to have that credo or that brand that you'll adhere to, so that you can be credible and so that you're not feeling pressured by the quota, the stereotypes, the whatevers that might get in your way.
Could you give an example? Here's an example, or let me ask this question. I'm going to make sure I ask this in a way that's going to benefit the listener and make sense to you. So because so many sales professionals and even professional service providers, like I work with a lot of dentists and chiropractors and even medical doctors, which I don't enjoy all that much, but from time to time I will. They don't want to be perceived as selling. They're only out to get your money, right? That's all they care about is getting your money. I've heard that from so many dental patients. Dentists only care about getting your money. When that's not true with the vast majority of people. It's just not. So what could you do? What are some steps you could take other than, what you just mentioned? Give me an example, if you could, is really what I'm looking. I don't care if it's fictitious. How could I, as a sales professional, what are some things I could do online to let people know other than that statement, like maybe in the blog post that I write or videos that I make, or, kind of reinforce that? Give me an example.
And absolutely in your actions. So a lot of salespeople say to me, I just want to help people. I just want to be a consultant. I just want to help people. Okay, prove it. Show me your actions. Tell me what you've done. And then they'll say sometimes things like, well, I don't want to be pushy. So if I'm really helping them, I'll give them some ideas. And, then I know they can proceed with those ideas, whatever's going to be helpful to them. Okay, well, is that really helping them? Or have you stopped short of helping them? Planting the seeds of the ideas, did that get them the result they needed? Did that help them? Did that impact them? Did that change their business for a dentist? Did it change the smile, the comfort, the not having pain because I, grind my teeth at night, right? To really help them, help includes a solution. So just even getting people to a point where they see whatever their credo statement is, whatever their brand, whatever they stand for, are they really seeing it through, or are they misunderstanding or potentially using their discomfort as a reason not to see their brand all the way through?
And so would this be a good situation? The scenario you just described, would this be a good situation to use, maybe, challenge the buyer with an outcome type of question from your framework, from the Discover framework?
Possibly, or it might be the value question. How important is this to you? How urgent? Where does this rank in priority with other things that you want to do? What's your top number one thing that you want to accomplish, right? So getting that sense of value before I jump in with whatever's my easy fix.
Nice. All right. I got one more question for you if you have time for that. And then I want to talk about the stuff you're working on. You've got an awesome platform that you built. Like I said, I'm not smart enough to have built this myself, but I'm stoked that you built it because it's exciting to see. I love to see other people succeed. I don't know if that's normal or abnormal, but I just love to see other people doing well. It's very inspirational and just lets me know how good God is. But having said that, Deb, what's the one question that I didn't ask today that I should have asked?
Oh, that is a great question. Well, podcasters often ask things like, when did you get started in selling, or something like that? And so I always enjoyed telling those stories because I was selling from a very, very early age. And so I guess you're also asking me to go ahead and answer it. So I'll just say this. I was the number one top selling campfire candy achiever from a very young age. And I would sell like 400 or 500 boxes of candy every campfire candy selling season. But it's because my mom taught me how to ask questions. So I was like this, 6, 7, 8-year-old, very motivated because you could win camper ships to Camp Shawnee. And I love outdoors, right? So, but my mom would teach me how to ask questions. So I'd go knock on someone's door and it wasn't just, hi, would you like to buy some campfire candy? She'd have me asking questions like, what are your plans for your gift giving season? What are your guests going to nibble on after Thanksgiving dinner? All these questions, putting myself in the buyer's shoes.
So your mom totally helped set you up, your sales career and all the success you've had. You probably owe a lot to your mother for that very reason.
I think so. Yeah.
Nice. So Deb, if you could tell us what you're working on. Tell us how people can find out more about you. Tell us about this awesome platform that you built. It is amazing. I need to spend a little more time on it. I actually haven't had a whole lot of time lately, but that's on my agenda to do. as we move forward. So if you could, run with it.
You bet. So my company is called People First Productivity Solutions, and we work in sales productivity, leadership development, and team effectiveness, all things that get people connected. And I've been doing that for 15 plus years. What you're referring to, I think, Ken, is the Sales Experts channel. That's my give back to the sales community. And every year we have a roster of sales experts from around the world, and we give them a platform to come in and present. Because I only have a few answers, but when I get a lot of people together, there's many, many more answers that we can provide. We've got about 1,000 pieces of content now that are all available on demand. They're archived. They're easy to find by searching. That's the salesexpertschannel.com. And truly, the people there are remarkable. They have so much knowledge and wisdom. And what I'm working on right now is getting ready to release the Discover Questions book for coaches. So if you're a manager or a professional coach, someone who helps others along, but not a salesperson, that's what this book will be all about.
So do you have any kind of a whet your appetite PDF or anything they can download on your website?
It's just a little bit too early, I'm afraid.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, let me know when that comes out, because that will resonate instantly with a lot of people that I know.
Okay.
Like lots and lots of people. So what's the timeline on that book? Because now you got me interested in another book.
Yeah, well, I'm working out a contract thing with a publisher, and that's always a little bit messy, but I would like to see, the book is mostly written, right? So I would like to see some action on this by about 6 months from now, which probably means releasing early next year. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you being on the show today. I know you're a very busy person. Like I said, I've been looking forward with great anticipation to this interview, and you're probably the closest interview that I've done, other than like the people that I have on my show from the local community, like my guest experts. You're just across, about 240 miles from here, 230, across the state.
Which means we're going to have to get together live and in person one of these days.
I would love that. I would count that as such a blessing to me and such an honor. I would love that. I will drive to Kansas City. I would. Just to spend time with you and just to shadow you and learn from you. I would do that in a heartbeat, because it would be an investment that would pay it forward for me for years to come. So, and I mean that. I am serious as a heart attack when I say that. So anyway, listen, I appreciate you being on the show today. Anything else you want to add before we run?
No, I always welcome folks getting in touch with me. If you have any questions or any feedback, I'd love to hear from you. Just tell me that we met through Ken.
And how do you want them to do that?
So on the website, you'll find all my peoplefirstps.com, People First Productivity Solutions. You'll find all my LinkedIn and other social media handles. My email address is there. So that's probably the fastest way.
As you heard during my conversation with Deb Calvert today, the surest way to choke, blow opportunities to convert prospects into paying clients and generate sales is to follow old, outdated methods of selling. During the conversation, you heard Calvert reveal a new model that you can use to sell more effectively. A model about creating value for and engaging with your buyers. Having a sales system in your business that allows you to consistently convert prospects and close more deals is mandatory if you want to get clients now, make more sales, and grow your business, especially as we find ourselves in the heart of the new COVID economy. Over the last 4 years, we've had several conversations about how to create an effective, powerful sales system for your business. A great episode that comes to mind is episode 357, where one of the world's leading sales experts and best-selling authors, Mike Weinberg, actually, he's got several best-selling books on sales. And in that episode, he shared sales strategies that you can use to help drive sales and increase profits in the heart of the new COVID economy. These are specific to the new COVID economy. In fact, Jed Blunt, a man considered to be the leading sales coach in the world by most experts, says that Mike Weinberg is responsible for most of his success in selling. So if you're looking to become more effective at selling, especially if you hate selling, episode number 357 is the perfect episode for you to go to next. Today, you also heard Calvert talk about the difference between added value and created value. And if you're trying to compete on added value alone, you're in serious trouble, which is why learning how to create value for your prospects and clients can help you bulletproof your sales process. Now, if you'd like to learn the foolproof method for creating value for your buyers so you can close more deals and do it consistently, episode 363 with Chris Filipiak is an amazing place to start. In that episode, you'll learn how to delight and amaze clients, create immediate sales, and generate referrals by creating value for your prospects and clients. And then finally, if you'd like to learn how to completely eliminate the fear of selling from your life, I'd recommend episode number 381 with Andrea Waltz, author of one of the best-selling sales books on Amazon for 10 years running, and that book is Go for No. Now, during the conversation in episode 381, Waltz reveals how to transform fears of failure and rejection into absolute confidence and empowerment when you learn how to go for no. You'll find all those episodes on the KenNewhouse.com website. And speaking of incredible content like I've got on KenNewhouse.com, on my next episode, I'm having a conversation with Mr. Inside Sales, and that would be Mike Brooks. Brooks is one of the leading sales trainers in the world and author of not one, but two of the best-selling books on how to use the telephone. Yes, people still use the telephone. Listen, if you're not using the telephone, whether you're a sales professional or not, I don't care if you're a consultant, a professional services provider, or a dedicated sales professional, if you're not using the phone, you're potentially losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in new business, if not more. Now, the two books that Brooks authored is number one, The Ultimate Book of Phone Scripts, and number two, Power Phone Scripts, both incredible, incredible books. So join me for a conversation on our next episode with my guest, Mike Brooks, where we're going to discuss how to use the telephone to get more clients, drive sales, and make your business more profitable than ever. Have a great week, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.
Our objective with this podcast is to help you and your business stand out in the marketplace by crystallizing your messaging, marketing, and communications. On behalf of the whole Ken Newhouse team, thanks for listening.